Welcome to the Wilderness of Creativity, the podcast where artists, makers and dreamers explore the wild side of creativity. With over 22,000 views on YouTube and a growing community across the US, Germany, Australia, the UK, Italy and Ireland, we are building something special here. Have you rated and reviewed the show yet? If not, why not? Because your support boosts us in the charts and also helps other artists find their way into the wilderness. Subscribe, review and keep wandering, because the wilderness is waiting. Thanks for listening. Stay wild. Hello and welcome back to the Wilderness of Creativity, the podcast that explores the wild and wonderful winding paths of creative living. I'm your host, Lucy, and today I'm joined by Laura Laws, the founder of Mouse Meg. Mouse Meg is a small creative business that blends heartwarming illustration with playful storytelling. What started as a passion project has grown into a successful business with products ranging from illustrated prints to personalised commissions. In this episode, we talk about the grit and determination it takes to build a small creative business from the ground up. Laura shares how she's learned to adapt through changing times and the realities and rewards of creating social media content. We also reflect on those pivotal sliding door moments, the butterfly effect of creative decisions, and the emotional journey of rebranding. Plus, Laura shares some brilliant tips and tools for anyone starting out with Procreate. So if you're a budding digital artist, you'll definitely want to take some notes. Right, let's get to the episode. Okay, so the card that's come up for you this evening is Adventure is Waiting for You.
Ooh. I hope so.
If not, well. Do you feel like you are absolutely like on an adventure at the minute?
Yeah, it's crazy. Just always talking about this crazy journey that I'm on. Because I didn't ever, I don't know, I didn't actually have a moment where I thought, oh, this is going to be a small business. It just kind of has happened. And the more I've kind of gone along on my way and loved being creative again, the more I've kind of thought, oh yeah, do you know what? I could do this or this and this and just sort of learning to adapt. And I don't think I've ever been so determined to make something successful. And it definitely feels like an adventure, definitely. And then I was not expecting everything that's gone on with Instagram and Facebook and all the making the reels, and that all came up as like a separate thing, and now I love doing that too. So there isn't a part of this adventure that I don't enjoy. And it does feel like an adventure, and I just like at each point just keep thinking, so what can I do next? Where can I take it? And just wanting to make a success of it too. So
to think back to when you started Mouse Meg, and it wasn't Mouse Meg as we know it now, was it? When it started out, do you want to take us back to that moment when you started to, where this idea started to take fruition and how it's changed?
Well, I went to Bath, so I've not actually been back yet, and I'd kind of want to go back to sort of where this adventure started. I went to Bath with my husband. I just lost my job, and he was on he had a work trip down there, and he said, well, why don't you come down, spend some time down there, just relax, just enjoy yourself, just see if you can get your head straight. And so I thought, perfect time to do so. And I always I did a reel recently about butterfly effect, and so I decided to pack my sketchbook. I hadn't done any drawing for ages and ages, and I just kept thinking, well, what if I'd have packed another book? What if I'd have just decided to go and take myself around the shops? I did a bit of that as well, but I decided to take some pencils and my sketchbook, and because obviously I knew he was going to be working, so I was going to have a lot of time to myself. And as a busy mum, I sort of thought, yeah, it'd be really nice to like reconnect with that. And then suddenly this little bunny started to come to life on the page. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I might be able to do something with this. So I literally went to Bath and came back with a business idea. But it wasn't a business idea, really. I just thought I could sell a few paintings for babies and children. I could personalise them. And if I got each design, I could then trace each one off, then write the personalisation on it and hand paint it and put it on Etsy. And I remember I set up my Etsy shop and I sort of cleared a week thinking, oh my God, the orders are going to become flying in. I'm going to literally just be rushed off my feet with painting. And yeah, I was that daft. And that obviously didn't happen. And when I did get a few orders, I just realised it was taking me 2, maybe 3 days to perfect these paintings. I was doing them like one little splodge on. I wasn't happy with that and I'd tear them up. Just such a perfectionist. And so it was my husband actually who said to me, have you thought about learning to draw digitally? And I was so anti the idea. I just was like, no, I don't want to. But I got more and more anxious and overwhelmed and was tearing up these paintings and it drove me mad. But by that point, I just fallen in love with being creative again. So, yeah, he bought me an iPad and told me to download Procreate, and I started messing about with it. And so I hate to admit he was right.
We won't tell him.
And then I just thought, okay, so I go right back to the beginning and I learned Procreate and I thought, okay, I'm going to just have a total rebrand. So design my logo on Procreate and yeah, so I just thought, okay, well, let's see where we can go with it. So yeah, that's how we got onto this pathway.
It's like a sliding doors moment, isn't it? You know, not pack the sketchbook, just go round the shops. And yet here we are, you know, with Mouse and Meg, you know, and really flourishing. Sometimes out of those sort of challenging moments in our lives, we kind of lean into our creativity. And if we really let it take us, it can just whisk us off into a different direction, can't it? And it can feel scary, but at the same time, it's so exciting.
I had no idea that this was where it was going to lead, but yeah, just that little sort of spark of an idea and just drawing. So I used to teach in a nursery. I used to do art with the children in craft projects and things. So I think it just naturally came to me that I drew, you know, bunny rabbits and elephants, and so it just seemed right that it was for babies and children. And having loved being creative and doing arts, crafts and things with children, yeah, it is really strange. I sort of look back now and think, my goodness, if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be having an absolute whale of a time. It does sort of just, yeah, it's amazing when life picks you up and just takes you somewhere you didn't ever intend to be, but and then turn around and go, wow.
Did you draw when you were a kid as well?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I've always loved to draw. And I remember though when I was, I must have been 6, and I drew an elephant from like a photograph of an elephant. I can see it now actually. And my teacher actually called my parents in, showed them this elephant and said she could see that there was something that needed to be nurtured there, that I'd obviously been very that's a really good skill to have when you start art, when you start drawing, is to be able to copy is like a grade skill. So I think she'd noticed that I'd been, I'd taken, really, really looked at this elephant, and it sort of had wrinkles and the little wavy lines in its ears and things. And so she told my parents that it really ought to be something that was nurtured. And then I just thought, I used to come home from school and draw and paint, and I've always loved it. So, and then when I think back now with all every sort of job that I've done, there's always been some element of that to it. So, it's not surprising that it drew me back in eventually. It went, no, come on, do some drawing.
And I think that's so beautiful as well, because often when people are talking about their creative pursuits, they go back to something that they did when they were a child. I've just been doing the Claim Your Creativity with Tara Jackson, and the second or third installment of the program is about tapping into your inner child and going back to, something that you did when you were first sort of experiencing the world. And so the fact that you drew this elephant and the teacher recognized that as a skill, as a talent, as something that needed to be nurtured is just so beautiful. And you've come back to that as well. It makes the connection between what you're doing and who you're doing the prints for even more so special.
Yeah, I've looked after kids, and and that's always been my favourite thing to do with them, is to when I was looking after two girls, and we often used to do art and craft projects. Obviously I did that with my children too, so it just naturally feels like right to do children's drawings. And I often think about the hours and hours I used to spend when I came home from school, sitting painting. And I had my bedroom door was just full of paintings that I'd drawn. So I used to put them all over the front of my bedroom door. Normally ones with sort of my name on it, as like, this is where I was.
Yeah. I love that. And it's funny that you say, you wanted to avoid going down the digital route, but Procreate seems to be the right program for you and you're really enjoying it. For those people who are listening, perhaps who don't, I wouldn't know what it is. I'm assuming it's, it's a software program that you can use to draw your designs into and then, titivate them. And do you want to talk a little bit about that particular program and how that's really allowed you to explore all of your different ideas?
I cannot sing its praises highly enough. Though all of my designs, they still start life on a piece of paper with a pencil. So of all the things that I've been able to master in Procreate, the one thing I've never been able to get right is the sketching. Because what is good about Procreate, and obviously, as I was too much of a perfectionist, if you tap the screen with two fingers, it will undo whichever line you just drew. So you can undo mistakes really, really quickly. But I don't know why, but something like when you sketch on a piece of paper, you can still see the faint outline of the line that you did before, even if you erase it. So it's kind of easy to see where you've been and then learn from that line. So I still find the sketching process on paper, I don't know, there's just something about it sort of really still comes from the heart when it's on paper. But Procreate then allows me. So what I do is I take my sketches. One of the questions I get asked most of all is, which scanner do you have to put my sketches into Procreate? And my answer is, I don't have one. So there's a tool in Procreate. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of tools in Procreate. And one of them is that you can take a photograph. So I just hover my iPad over my sketchbook, I take the photograph of my sketch, and then basically you've got lots of different layers, and sort of put a layer over. Then I can sort of trace over my original sketch, and then it's filled with amazing digital art brushes, a fantastic color palette, and so you basically it's exactly the same as. So I often get sort of people saying to me, "Well, it's all done for you, though, isn't it? In that app, it's like I think you just press a button and then suddenly artwork appears." And it's like, well, no, I still have to put in a lot of, time and effort. I have to blend things and shade and but it is fantastic. I resize things all the time, and I mean, it's great now. I know my way around. I pretty whiz around it these days, which is good. But yeah, it is. I would highly recommend that anyone start using Procreate. And of course, digital art is just so up and coming now. And I don't think that the results are any different really from using traditional methods. But I do love it, and it's certainly made a world of difference to me.
I was going to say, because I mean, I've watched some of your progress Insta stories of how you're developing from a sketch. In the next stage is shading and blending, like you were saying, and tracing the shape, and then adding all the little bits, like remember the strawberry, and I suppose it's just allowing you to scale up what you're doing and make sure that you can keep up, because as Mouse and Meg started to grow, you needed to be able to produce the prints, and this obviously allows you to do that so you can keep up with demand. But I can imagine it being that process still being very creative and very time consuming, and the efforts there. How long does it take you to actually do a print then from start to finish?
It depends really. Some of my designs have taken a couple of days, but that generally seems to be the least amount of time that I can design something in. Others can take me weeks, months, stopping and starting. Because obviously when you've got a small business to run as well, the juggle of, life and also running a small business and then finding the time to create can be quite tricky. So my ABC chart, for example, had on it obviously 26 tiny little designs of from A to Z. So that took, each one individually done. It did take a long time. Probably took me a couple of months in total, sort of on and off.
Wow.
So yeah, it can depend. It can differ massively.
And as well, I suppose, as part of that creative process, you need to step back and you need to rest and you need to recharge and recuperate. And I mean, you had a bit of a fall, and that probably would have put you back a little bit off your chair.
Yes,
I did watch that. I thought, oh, careful, Laura. And then I saw your next story, like, yep, go to A&E. But then I think more recently, I feel like you've been in a more of a reflective stage where you're thinking about what this should look like and what it actually is, and sort of taking your time to be creative and getting back to like the essence almost of what you're doing, because sending orders out and doing all sorts of different things, it can become overwhelming, can't it?
yeah, definitely. And I have had about 6 weeks when life got very busy. My daughter Meg turned 18. My stepdaughter Poppy is taking her GCSEs. So there was just sort of lots to organise, proms and parties.
Yes.
And and also at the beginning of the year, I sort of just set myself too many goals. I think it's very easy to think, okay, well, I need to be doing this and this and this. And I read a little while ago something about you should never compare your page 20 to somebody else's chapter 20. And I think sometimes, it's much as I love being on social media and creating reels, it can be a difficult place to be when you're comparing yourself to businesses Mouse Meg is turning 2 this month. So still very young business in the grand scheme of things. So I think, sometimes it's very easy to get swept up with where you sort of think you ought to be. And it is difficult when it's just you running these things, just one person. And I sort of realized that actually I'd set about creating a new product, and I've kind of been chipping away at it, but I had not really had much time for that. I set about doing, like you mentioned, the strawberry. That's all part of a series of illustrations that I started sort of purely for my social media. So I could turn it into a calendar at the end of the year. We never know. To welcome in each month. So it was really only those that I was doing, and I suddenly sort of thought, goodness off. One of the goals that I'd really, really set myself as a priority was to create new products this month. I don't want to get away from prints. I still want to do prints, but I've also got lots of ideas about other things too. So I wanted to get on with doing that. So yeah, it definitely, sometimes you have to really look at, hang on a minute, take stock and decide what's important here, trying to not do all of the things all of the time. It can be tricky not to do that, not to get swept away with all of the what you think you should do, and concentrate on sort of what is important, not just for your business, but also for the sake of your sanity.
I know, exactly. And, I hear so much of what you're saying because, when you asked me at the start of our conversation, how long have you been doing it? Well, I've been doing the podcast a year, and I'm like, I'm not doing enough. I need to be doing more. I need to be having memberships. I need to be doing this. And, I need merchandise. And, again, at the start of the year, I thought, right, I'm gonna start doing some merchandise. I'm gonna get some tote bags. I'm gonna get a Cricut machine. I'm gonna do all of that. And I have a 4-year-old and I work full time. So when, Lucy, are you actually going to do that? And then all of those expectations, all of that pressure comes
Yeah.
in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, hang on a minute. No one else is putting this pressure on me apart from me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So stop it. What you said earlier about sometimes social media is toxic. Sometimes we can be on there so much scrolling, creating the reels, which I agree is really creative. I love creating reels and the stories. And however, it can be dangerous because you do start comparing yourself to people who are way ahead of you in terms of, maybe just the time that they've been doing something, the connections and the networks that they've got. It's all relative, isn't it?
Though, having said that, the power of social media is phenomenal. I genuinely don't think I'd have continued on this journey if it hadn't been for the support of my followers, which has been truly phenomenal. So many times I'll be on my stories and I'll sort of say, oh, I'm not getting on with this. And I don't know, and just occasionally I'll get a message. I had one the other day from a follower who messaged me. I was having a bit of a down day. And she said, I just wanted to say thank you, because I love it when your content pops up. And I love seeing all your artwork, and it's a true inspiration. So I just wanted to say thank you. And it's like, wow, if I hadn't have actually, some people have said, just remarkable things about my artwork, and it really does power me through, and it sort of holds me accountable too, because I kind of don't want to let those people down either. So, yeah, it can be a tricky place to be, but I genuinely, it's been quite remarkable in the last year, the support that I've had, and how that's. I always say, like, nobody should need outside validation. We should all be sort of, having our own backs, which is something I've really had to learn to do. Stop being my own harshest critic. But I do love that so many people are just so kind and generous and say lovely things. It just has helped me immensely. Pick me up through the difficult days.
Well, a shout out to all of the followers and supporters of Mouse Meg, because, it's made a huge difference. Do you obviously have a designated space for creating your beautiful illustrations?
Well, first of all, I worked from my kitchen table, where many a small business starts, right? Then I decided that my son went off to, my son who's the mouse in Mouse Meg, he went off to, it's not called Mouse, I nicknamed him Mouse when he was little. And he went off to uni, so I used to work on his games. And then he came back from uni really early on last year. I was like, oh, no, what am I going to do? And he really isn't the tidiest lad. Oof, it's terrible. So I thought, I'm going to have to find myself a new workspace, and that's when I started working in my shed. And one of my followers had a little studio. We turfed it all out, and we did it over the course of long weekend. I think it was amazing what we got done, and I did manage to make it look really lovely out there. And so many people sort of loved, because obviously I shared all that journey on Instagram too. And one of my followers nicknamed my shed my Shadudio.
Shadudio, I love that.
And I did love it out there, and people loved that I was working in my shed. But it was just like, it was really hot in the summer or really cold. It was very difficult filming out there because it creaked terribly. Or I'd be out there and someone would start mowing their lawn, or dogs barking and buses going past and seagulls being on the south coast. The seagulls are so noisy. And it would hear them like tapping along the roof. So it became pretty obvious that it wasn't like, it was lovely in there, but not a practical solution. I couldn't have my paper out there or my printer. So I didn't want to keep any expensive equipment out there. So, so it's like finally, my eldest stepson also gone off to university, and with his permission, I've pinched his room.
It does make a massive difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, huge. And it's sort of like, I suppose, as well, just somewhere to know that once I'm in here, I'm in the zone. So, and it's quite, although, it's quite tucked away, I actually used to feel quite isolated out there. I'd come back in and the kids would perhaps have a conversation with me about something, and they go, yeah, well, we were speaking about that earlier, and I'd missed it all. So I kind of missed the buzz of the house a little bit. I thought I would like being out there, but and away from that. But yeah, so it's nice to be here, but it's a little bit tucked out of the way, so that I can have a sort of little calm oasis of creativity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that oasis of creativity. And do you work in silence, or do you have music on? Like, how do you get into the zone?
Do you know what? I do work in silence a lot of the time. I think I grew up in a house. My mum loved music, but she didn't like the radio. She didn't like the chitter chatter of it all. And she did quite just like, so I wasn't sort of brought up with the radio on all the time, so I do quite like a bit of silence. I mean, some days not. Some days I listen to a podcast. And some days I will it depends what mood I'm in. I quite listen to a bit of chill hop. That's great to listen to because it is just chilled out and it's kind of that nice chilled vibe. And there's no, sometimes, hearing the lyrics to things, it's quite distracting. So I do just like putting a bit of that on sometimes. But yeah, it depends. I mean, obviously, if I'm working on reels and I'm editing to the beat and things, then I have to do that in silence because you have to listen to the music over and over again. So I don't do lots of music, a bit of noise.
Your reels are pretty impressive. I mean, I have watched quite a few of yours thinking, okay, I am going to try and recreate that for the wilderness of creativity. Because they're so good. Like the music, like how you have all the captions going through, they tell a story. Like how did you just discover how to do that? Or did you watch a lot of reels as well to kind of get inspiration? Because I never know what works and what doesn't work.
Well, this time last year, it was last April, I was really floundering when it came to social media. I had no ideas. I kind of did a few process reels and I was completely conflicted between, am I an artist? Am I a small business? Because small businesses and artists' content seemed to be very different. I didn't feel comfortable about showing my face. I was just like, should I only show my work? And of course, there's so many gurus out there with so much information. Most of it is rubbish, nonsense. But it was a lot of noise and I didn't know who to believe. But then I found, I'd followed Martha Keith in her stationery business. And she makes such brilliant reels. And I saw that she'd set up a separate Instagram account called Business Secrets Club. And I instantly followed it. And she then went on to do a challenge called the Reset with Reels Challenge. And it was to post a reel on a theme every day. And then it was going to be like that you'd follow the hashtag and everybody could go and look at everybody else's content that was taking part. And I remember it's another one of those moments where, I pat my sketchbook and not another reading book. It's another one of those moments that makes me go a little bit cold, like, oh my goodness, what if I hadn't have done that? So the day before the challenge was due to start, I said to my husband, what do you think I should do? I've not planned anything. There are some days I'm not sure about. I've got no ideas. And I was in the process of designing my ABC chart. So, and he said to me, see, he was not right on this occasion. He said, I don't think it's a good idea. He said, I think you'll go down a rabbit hole and you want to get on with your new design. So I think, no, don't do it. So I literally didn't sleep all night. I was still going round in my head like, oh no, I just felt like that gut instinct, like I was making a really, really terrible mistake by not taking part. And I was meeting up with my friend for coffee the next day. And I was just getting ready and I just thought, I'd seen Martha's reel on the day one and I'd seen other people's going up and I thought, I had this massive dollop of FOMO. And I thought, I'll just put something together. So I sat down in my bedroom chair and I literally just found a couple of tiny clips that I'd filmed of myself drawing on Procreate. And just a few bits and bobs, photoed me in Bath, day one was my story. So I kind of managed to tell my story and say about how I was a perfectionist and how I'd learnt Procreate and how I'd learning children's prints and I was created children's prints. And threw this reel together, loaded it up, commented on Martha's post and went, oh yeah, mine's up now. Went off for a coffee, didn't think any more of it. And then by the end of the day, it had got 6,000 views. And I was like, that's way more than I would usually get. That's amazing. It's all part of the challenge. By the end of day two, it got 15,000 views. And every morning and then of course, because it was doing so well, and then felt like I've got to carry on with the challenge. Yeah, and it just went nuts. I mean, not nuts in people get millions and millions of views on their reels, and it stands at the moment at 690,000 views. But it brought with it, amazing followers, and that one reel made me 6,000 followers. So, and then I suppose because I was sort of thrown in the deep end, I just learned, as with my small business, as with Procreate, as with my art, I just learnt so much as I went along, picking things up, and just fell in love with creating content. So, thank goodness I listened to my gut instinct on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, you do strike me as the sort of person who is very open-minded, who, like, you have a great deal of trust in yourself and in the process, and, following that intuition. And I mean, I might be going off piste here, but when you're working with children in that environment, that is very much part and parcel of that job, isn't it? So when you're working in nurseries, when you're working with children, you're observing and listening and following that curiosity that the children are taking you on a path. And I'm wondering whether, because of your experience in that, that's kind of part of your creative process almost. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I think you could be right, actually. And just generally being a mum, you have to kind of, you don't really have much time to sort of stop and think about things, do you? Sometimes you just have to hit the ground running. And I definitely do trust my instinct on so many things like that. Just, I've really learned over the years that it's very rarely wrong. So, it's learning to kind of try and not fight against that is the important. And again, in my art, sometimes that feeling of, hang on a minute, that could be better, or knowing when to stop. That's one of the hardest things to learn, when you're drawing and to not keep going sometimes, to learn that actually, oh, that's right. Don't keep messing, because you could go sort of a bit crazy with it. Like, learn to know when that process is done. We're finished here. That's about as good as it's going to get, and keep adding any more to it, you could take it over the edge. So yeah, it's again, it's just something that you have to slowly but surely remember and listen to and take on board. Learning to trust that in. It's been a massive part of this journey, definitely.
Did you feel that you kind of closed that part of yourself down a little bit, maybe in the past?
I've always struggled with self-confidence. I've all kind of beaten myself up over things, and I think maybe that is that whole, it's learning, because it is quite learning to have that confidence to go, no, okay, this is right, or no, that's not right for me. Yes, this is right for me. No, I've definitely got to take this path. And that is something that I've just been unsure and insecure about. in my life before, making decisions. So, yeah, definitely I would say it is something that I'm getting a lot better about, knowing that generally that instinct is there. It seems to be there for a reason.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, then please do take a moment to leave us a review and rate the show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and check out our YouTube channel for more updates and behind the scenes content. See you in the next episode. Stay wild.